We've got our K3 drum components cleaned up, pistons cleaned up, the drums cleaned up. We've inspected the splines, everything looks good. Going to take our clean piston and install a new O-ring, a D-ring actually, and lube it up, put it down into the drum. Goes down in the drum nice and easy. We've got our return spring with the dish facing down. Now we're going to install our L-shaped retaining snap ring. Remember, we used our Sprag race from the 4F27E transmission down in the drum to compress the spring evenly. Okay, so now we're going to use a suitable press to put it together. It can be a little fussy, guys, so be patient with it and take your time. But with a special tool, not a big problem. Okay, we've been soaking our clutches in automatic transmission fluid for 10 minutes, and now we're ready to install the clutch pack. We can use a straight edge like this to determine which way the dish is. Very simply, this way the inner edge of the dish plate faces the bar. This way it faces away from it. So we want to put this dish down into the drum. Now we're ready to load up our one-sided frictions. So let's just get those down into the drum. Install our pressure plate and our selective snap ring. The selective snap ring is now in the drum. Now we can measure our clutch clearance with our feeler gauge. Clutch clearance should be approximately 2.0 to 2.9 depending on clutch count. We've got our sun gear components cleaned up and they're ready for inspection. The sun gear, we want to take a look at the bearing race inside the gear. We want to inspect the gear for cracks, wear, and chipped teeth. We have a bearing race inside here. We want to make sure that there's no pitting or wear. On the sun gear, I've got the bearing peeled back so you can see the inner race. We want to make sure that that's free of wear and that the bearings are in good shape. Okay, so let's assemble this sun gear hub onto the sun gear shaft. We're going to take the bearing assembly, put it down onto the shaft. The race looks real good. Down onto the shaft. We're going to take the retaining snap ring, our snap ring pliers, and be patient with this snap ring because it distorts quite a bit when it gets spread out. You can see it really torque when I get it onto the shaft here, so it makes it a little difficult to get squared away. Okay, now we've got that snap ring set down in the groove. Now we're ready to put a new set of O-rings on the shaft. Remember, these are the O-rings that seal the piston. The inner seals for the piston, okay? Got the top one on there. Let's get the bottom one on there. Work it down into the groove. Okay. Now we've got our rubber O-rings all set up on the shaft, and we're ready to move on. We're going to take a minute to inspect the rear Planetary gear set. First of all, we're going to check the bearing down inside of the Planetary gear set. This is a captured bearing. Planetary gears hold it into the set, so we're not able to remove it, but we can feel for roughness and turn it. It seems smooth. Looks good. Now we're going to inspect the gears of the Planetary gear set for chipping and wear. We're going to check to see if the gear wobbles on the shaft. Make sure that all the washers are intact here and here on all 4 gears. That looks real good. The teeth look real good. Washers are intact. There's no wobble on the gears. Really good to go. Now we notice that our center ring gear, we can expect that, but we also see that there's a snap ring that is retaining this ring gear into the housing. If this has been a metal job, there's a lot of metal inside the unit, it's not a bad idea to take this apart. We can remove the snap ring out of there, and we can pull the gear right up and out of there. We can see it's a good idea that there might be some fine metal that gets caught down in here that we want to take apart. Now, it came apart real nice and easy, so that means it's going to be a little more difficult to put back together. And just use a screwdriver to lightly tap it down in there. Boom. Right down in there. We're going to put the snap ring back in. Now we're all set. Planet looks good, ready to be assembled. Okay, now we have our rear Planetary gear set. We're going to renew these sealing rings and inspect this rear bearing right here. We're going to slide that off the shaft and remove our sealing rings here. There we go. These are the plastic sealing rings. We want to take real good care of them. Gets caught in the snap ring groove there. Comes the one. Now remember, these are the sealing ring grooves we talked about earlier that seal the sun gear to the output shaft. Now we have a sealing ring way down in here. Good. Okay, so now we're going to disconnect, get that sealing ring out of here. This one can be a bit of a toughie, so takes a couple of 90-degree scribes to get down in behind this sealing ring. There we go. We got one edge up. Get the other edge out of there. And out comes the sealing ring. Okay, these are all the same size. Now we can clean this Planetary gear set up and do our inspection. Just like the other Planetary gear sets, we want to look for cracked or worn teeth. We want to make sure that the brass thrust washers are intact right here. On each one of these gears, that the bearing and the thrust washer is looking good. Nice and thick. That's a great thrust washer right there. And finally, you can see right in there that that looks real good. We can feel that they're spinning freely. There's no wobble on the shafts. This bearing surface, this fits in the back of the K1 clutch drum. Looks real good, nice and shiny. It's not pitted or worn. This surface right here is also looking real good. Okay, so got it all cleaned up. We've got our new sealing rings ready to go back together. Carefully fit those down onto the shaft. Okay, that one went in there real nice. Gonna put that down on there real nice. And our last sealing ring goes down into the groove. Excellent. Our journal here looks free of pits and scoring. Very cool. Now we're going to put the cage back on. Now our center planetary gear set is ready for assembly. We have all of our K3 drum and planet assemblies cleaned up and inspected, new sealing rings installed. So let's put the whole assembly together. We want to install the middle bearing here. This goes in between the rear and center planet. It sits real nice and snug down in here. So we're going to place the center planet in the rear planet, like so. Going to take the K3 drum and sun gear assembly, put it on the planet like so. Now we have our bearing. We're going to put our bearing race down on the shaft, our bearing, and then our top bearing race down on the shaft. Slides nice and easy down on there, looks real good. And now the retaining snap ring. Cool. It's nice and snug down in there. That looks real nice. Now we're going to take our new sealing rings, put them down into the grooves. Remember, these sealing rings seal the shaft to the case where we feed the K3 drum. Fit them down into the groove. Real nice fit there. And that completes the assembly of the K3 clutch drum planetary gear set.